All right, the LILJ is back for another edition of the Weekly Crossbar Podcast. Ellis Joshua and Coach Wink coming at you here today. Coach Wink, how you doing here on this Sunday? A rare Sunday edition of the Weekly Crossbar, but we kind of had to move some things around a bit, but of course, haven't forgotten about the podcast. But how you doing here today?
I'm doing wonderful. Looking forward to talking about. Looks like we got about 20 games to discuss. We've had a busy, I guess, 8 days, right? We started Friday, April 25th till yesterday, May 3rd, and excited to talk about all these great players and great teams. And I enjoyed covering all those games with you. We had some really good games and saw some really good talent. We even got to see some great Long Island players play at the collegiate level, which was kind of cool, which will be the tail end of this podcast. So make sure you listen all the way through because we'll get to talk about a lot of good Long Island kids, boys and girls, that played for championships in the D2 level.
Oh, yeah. We'll definitely be getting into that towards the tail end of this podcast, as you mentioned. But first, we got to go back. We got to go back to last Friday, April 25th, because on that day, we were over at Massapequa High School for a Nassau Class A battle between Massapequa and Port Washington on the boys' side. And we talked about it, Coach Wink, on this podcast a few weeks back, how at the time, it looked like, at least in our eyes, that Massapequa was looking like they could potentially be the number one seed in Class A, and Port Washington looking like they could be the number two seed. So it looked like those were kind of your front runners at the time when we were discussing those teams. And we were treated to a good one last Friday. And I think those two teams definitely showed why they could be your front runners at the moment. And so that game went to Massapequa. 9-7 was your final, but they did have to come back in that game to win it. They were trailing in that game at the half, 6-4, and they put together a really good second half. Were able to come back and get a win in that game. But I think that can definitely be a matchup that we could be seeing in the playoffs in just a few weeks. But Massapequa getting the better of Port in the regular season matchup. And just talking about a couple of the standouts, the POGs, you had Tyler Burns. He was 2-2 for Massapequa. Michael Gennady, he had 16 saves for the Chiefs, so he really came up big. And at the faceoff X, Ryan Chabis, he had a really nice day for Massapequa, helping them have an edge there. But that was just a really competitive game. And again, would not be surprised if we saw those two teams again in the postseason.
Yeah, interesting. I just noticed the score of the Port Washington Syosset game. I think it was 6-2.
Yes,
So
for
Port
Washington.
held Syosset to 2 goals. So it looks like right now the Port Farmingdale game will be for the 2 and 3 seed. Um, and so in reality, we're looking at Pequa 1, Farmingdale or Port 2 or 3, and then Syosset 4. So
Hmm.
that looks like it's going to be your semifinals in Class A Nassau, battling it out. So I'm excited to see how that all turns out. Wouldn't be surprised to see the winner of Farmingdale Port in the playoffs, obviously, battling Pequa in the championship of Nassau County A.
Right. And Massapequa, they beat Farmingdale just a couple days ago, back on Friday. So yeah, that's why Massapequa right now definitely have the edge as the number one seed at the moment. Um, Also too in that game, I we talked about just moments ago, we talked about Tyler Burns, but what about Jake Burns
Oh my
for
God.
Massapequa? Because he got plenty of burn in that game, and man, he is one tough customer.
Dude, I got to tell you something. This kid is in 8th grade. He steps on the field, does not play like an 8th grader, plays like a varsity athlete. I mean, this is a kid that's going to be one of those kids that we're going to watch as he develops, and he could be one of those, high level top recruits in the country. He took a hit in the game. It looked like he got knocked out. He got
Yeah,
up and he
he
came back in the game. I mean, an 8th grader getting laid out by a big boy. So he showed his true colors. Shout out to Jake because he's one tough cookie. So looking forward to watching his growth. He's going to be a hell of a player coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. The young guns are aplenty in Massapequa for sure with their underclassmen. But yeah, that was a good game to cover. And again, wouldn't be surprised if we see that matchup again in the playoffs. Now transitioning into Saturday, where we had an eventful day over at Cold Spring Harbor High School for the 2025 Games for Brains tournament, which it's just an unbelievable group of 10 games with 10 Long Island teams, 10 non-Long Island teams facing each other on the upper and lower turf fields, and you had games going on all day. And that's definitely one of my favorite days during the regular season to cover. And we talked about it on the podcast last week, just talking about the event itself and Andy Rappaport of News 12 and putting this together. And it was just a really, really fun day, even though the weather at times was a little bit of a mess, but we made the best of it. We made the best of it for sure. So I guess we can just kind of run through. We can talk about actually. We'll go through the games where the Long Island teams won. So we'll start there, and then after that, we'll then shout out the players of the game for the teams that won that aren't from Long Island. So the first Long Island winner of the day was West Islip. They beat Morristown 9-2. So in that game, Jenna Oblage, the sophomore, she had 3 goals and 2 assists. McKenna Gagliardi, 9 saves. Of course, West Islip got to have a really good day defensively if you're only allowing 2 goals. So Sam McCormick, also a POG, part of the West Islip defense. Caitlin Vale, she scored 2 goals as well. So that's a nice win for West Islip, who's really rolling right now. After a 1-2 start to the season, the Lions are hot. So that's a good win for them in gains for brains, and they are really in tip-top shape, it looks like, as we approach the postseason.
It's funny. The lion logo is going to be very prevalent in this podcast. We're going to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about the Lions at the end, and we're going to talk about the Lions now. But West Islip is showing their grit. They're showing after a 1-2 start. They knocked off Smithtown West this week, which is their arch nemesis, who
Mhm.
they played in the county finals last year, who very possibly they'll play again in the county finals. That was a 1-goal game, I believe, correct?
Yes, that was a 6-5 game.
Shows a lot. Shows a lot. They show grit in West Islip. It's just in their blood, baby. Lax is in the DNA of a West Islip resident. You can't get away from it. We'll talk about what's coming up this week as well. But that was a good win for West Islip. For those that don't know, Morristown was one of the state champs in Jersey last year. So it's a quality program. So West Islip took them down. And then I guess the next winner was the number one team in the country, right?
Yeah, St. Anthony's. St. Anthony's against Chatham. And that game did not start out in favor of the Friars. They were down 5-0 after the first quarter. That had to be their largest deficit in who knows how long, right?
Probably over 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, the Friars staring a 5-0 deficit after the first quarter, but they definitely showed their mettle for sure. They showed why they are the number one team in the country because after being outscored 5-0, the rest of the way, they outscored Chatham 13-2 to end up winning the game 13-7. And it kind of just shows that this Friars team, man, it almost seems like they have an on and off switch where it's like they can just flip it and they turn on that switch and they just kick it into another gear. And from the second quarter onward, the Friars, they showed why they're the number one team in the country. I mean, we can talk about their players that stood out. Of course, Molly Heine, she's their do-it-all midi. She's been doing it all season for St. Anthony's. She had 2 goals and 2 assists. Kat Rathjen, another usual suspect that'll step up. And also, I think one of the differences in that game as to why St. Anthony's turned it around was on the draw circle, switching it up and having Kat take the draws. Then they started to win a few. They started to win about 3 or 4 in a row. And that was kind of a turning point to start that second quarter. And that's what really helped them pick it up and turn it into another gear and change the tide of that game. But Kat was 2-1. Cameron Puppy, she scored 2 goals. Emma Speed, 2-1. Anna Christie, she had 3 goals. Defensively, of course, we talk about the Friar defense all the time. Sophia Novelli, who actually scored a goal in that game as well. And we got a sick highlight. Shout out to Tyler Kresser. That highlight is on the LI Lax Journal Instagram after the Friars forced a turnover. And Novelli took it in transition. Then it was a little give and go to Kat, back to Novelli, and she scored. So that was a really, really fun play to watch. That Friar team was fired up after that one. But just continuing with the defense, Megan Langton, we talk about her all the time. Another uncommitted defender. College coaches, watch out for Megan Langton. Definitely have her on your radar. Um, but again, St. Anthony's, they just showed why they're able to really just turn it into another gear. Again, down 5-0, you outscore Chatham 13-2 the rest of the way, to get another win and remain unbeaten and remain in that top spot.
Yeah, Devin Lang was also one of your POGs. She did
Yep,
a good
Devin
job
Lang.
in the dirty 30s, which is huge. I mean, it, we talk about offense a lot because it's easy to just throw out goals and assists, but you have to look at both the boys and the girls game and evaluate the defense and the people that are getting you the ball. And Lang is one of those kids. Great leader. She's going on to Princeton, but their defense. I mean, you could look at goals against nationally; they got to be one of the top in the country. I mean, I don't know, their goals against have to be in the fours, right? What was the most they gave up? 8 to
Yeah,
Darien, 7 to Chatham. They beat New Canaan
yep.
yesterday. What, 15-4?
Yeah, 15-4 against New Canaan. And that was a team that we saw at Games for Brands. And we'll get into that game in a few minutes. But New Canaan, that's a really good team. And you hold them to 4 goals, and they were up by 10 after the first half. So it just shows how elite that St. Anthony's team is.
Yeah, they're buzzing. They're buzzing. And then the next Long Island team to win, who by the way is on a roll right now. This team is on a
Yeah.
roll.
Yeah, they're
We're talking
hot.
about we're talking about the Lady Mustangs,
Yep,
right?
the Stangs are hot.
They're rolling, baby, behind Alexis Spalina, and with her 10-point games, I think she's got 3 or 4 of them this year. They took it to Suffern. They took it to them pretty good. What, 12-7, I think it was?
Yeah, 12-7 was your final in that game. And we saw Suffern, of course, the week before against Wantagh. So that's another good team. So that's a very nice win for Mount Sinai. And you mentioned Alexis Spalina, Wink. So in that game, she was 3-4 for 7 points, but also recorded her 300th career point in that game. So shout out to Alexis Spalina for achieving that milestone in that matchup. Um, they had the balloons and everything after the game, which was cool. Just a really really nice moment for Alexa recording her 300th point. Um, so also in that game, Sophia Masson, she had 3 goals and an assist. She was another POG as well. Kyla Orlando, she was big on the draw circle, also between the 30s, scored a goal as well. Shout out Lainey Friedman as well. She had a goal and she also had a goal and an assist. We saw some of the young guns for Mount Sinai between
Yeah.
Friedman, also Addison Chartrand as well. Chartrand in the class of 2030. So Mount Sinai, they have some young guns to look out for down the line. And in net, Catherine Arrington, she had 9 saves.
Yeah, she's having a really nice season, Arrington, and she is probably one of the most improved goaltenders over the last couple of years. So keep an eye out. She's only a 27. Keep an eye out
Yep.
on this kid this summer in the recruiting trails because this kid can stop the ball and arguably one of the most improved kids out there. That was a great win for Mount Sinai, and we didn't cover this game, but their 19-10 win this week over
Yeah, that was
Shoreham.
against Shoreham.
Very
Yeah,
telling. Very telling.
yeah, because we've seen Shoreham a couple times now over the last 2 weeks, and we've talked about how that's a team that if they get into the playoffs, they can certainly be scary. But Mount Sinai really, really kind of taken it to the Wildcats in that one. I mean, to score 19 goals and win by 9, oh man.
Yeah, that score was definitely one that caught my attention. I think Spallina went, what, 3-7 in that game?
Yeah, I think she's either 3-7 or four and six, but she had 10 points in that game.
They're right now. Sinai is feeling it, and they're going to be playing the big cats, I think, in the next 2 weeks. So very curious to see how Sinai does the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're on a roll right now as they try to make their way into the postseason in a loaded Suffolk Class C.
The next team that won, if I remember correctly, was the GC Trojans, right?
Yep, Yep, Garden City over New Canaan. And we just talked about New Canaan. It's a very good team, but that's a really good win for Garden City, winning that game 10-9. Of course, no Kyle Fennell for GC, so makes it that much harder to win a game against a very good team like New Canaan. But again, Garden City, we know just how much depth they have at that program. They're exceptionally well coached, and it was a really, really fun game just because it was kind of back and forth the whole way. And that was the game where we went IG live towards the end. We went IG live for the end of regulation because the game was tied. It was tied up at 9. And then it ended up being Avery Smith who had the game-winning goal on a free position with about maybe 30 seconds or so left in the game. She put them ahead 10-9 on a free po. And then Garden City, they ended up winning the ensuing draw after that. A huge ground ball was secured by Catherine Monaco. And Coach Edinger, he had taken his time out. And then after that, Garden City was able to just run out the clock and come away with that win. But that's a great win for Garden City.
Yeah, that was a good win. I got to shout out the kid Colucci, the lefty, who's kind
Yeah.
of coming in and replaced, obviously an all-world player like Kyle Fennell. I think she's done an amazing job. One of the few, arguably one of the few public schools that have probably 5 to 8 kids on their bench that don't see major minutes
Hmm.
that could come in and play at the level that they play at because they're so talented. That roster is so talented up and down the board. So it's interesting. And I'm just talking about the kids that are committed. They also have 27s that
Yeah.
are high level
Yep.
kids.
Yep. We'll be watching out for those kids in
Yeah,
the
a kid like Brantuck who's not getting major minutes right now, or Gettleman, right?
hmm
Those two are high, I mean, another school. They're stars.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So it's very interesting. It's kind of like wait your turn type of thing, which between you and I is kind of the old school way, and it's kind of cool because it doesn't matter if you're starting when you're a junior or when you're a sophomore. It's what you do when you get on the field. It's kind of
Yeah.
what St. Anthony's has been like. We talk
Yeah.
about that all the time. I
Yeah.
was going
It's how
over
you
the numbers.
maximize your opportunity.
Yeah, it's when you get your opportunity. If you look at St. Anthony's, they only had 4 returning starters. Well, not starters, like got
Like
contribute.
rotation players from last year.
Yeah, and now they got 16 that play. So that means 12 girls who didn't play much last year in the big games are stars of a team ranked 1 in the country.
Yep.
Think about that. Think about that's a program. Garden City is the same way. Next year, Brantuck and Gettleman, you'll be hearing about them. And obviously, a kid like Hegarty and Colucci is the kid. Fennell doesn't get hurt. People don't know who Colucci is. We obviously know because we watch a lot of the club game
Yeah, of
and
course.
and the
Yeah.
Winter
In the
League.
Winter League. Yep.
But she's a tremendous player. That kid, tremendous.
Yeah, she had the game tying goal in that game. So they were down 9-7 in the fourth quarter, and they ended up coming back to win that game.
Yeah, so shout out to GC and what they've built there. And I know that a lot of the stuff that they do in-house in their community between the men's and the women's programs, and that's what breeds this quality that they have up and down their lineups and their JV programs and their middle school programs. So other towns should kind of look at what they got going on and realize it's really about your community because this is arguably the most these most of a lot of these kids stay in the community, never leave, and
Yep.
they become high level college players. It's kind of cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now,
You want to run through who the did you run through already who the POGs were? Adamanelli, Smith, Monaco, Colucci, and Ellie Anderson,
yep.
who's going to Cornell, and that's a tremendous group of kids. And shout out to Syosset for getting a W at the game. That was, I think, the first time they've ever been in this event.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time since I've been covering Gains for Brains. I think this was the first time that they were in the tournament. But yeah, Syosset picking up a win, 15-10 over IHA. That's Immaculate Heart Academy. And in that game, Julia Shaughnessy, the Michigan commit, she had 7 goals in that game and 6 assists for 13
Oh
points.
wow, what a day!
Dominant, just
What a
absolutely
day,
dominant.
Shaughnessy.
A big time game for Julie Shaughnessy.
Good for her. She's a hell of a player. I see the other POG is the kid that I love so much, Lily Severa.
Yeah, the 27, Lily Silvera, she had 5 goals in that game. So it's basically like that's basically your whole offense right there, as they scored 15 goals in that game. And so those were your POGs from that game. And we did reach out through social media, so we got their addresses. So we're gonna send them some LILJ t-shirts because that was when the rain really started coming down. So as soon as that game was over, they got out of there in a hurry, and I don't blame them for sure. So they have LILJ t-shirts that are going to be coming their way pretty shortly.
Yeah, I just saw that Lily got us her address, which that's on Coach Wink. I'll get that out to you girls. We owe you. And then the last game of the night. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was half a game.
well, let me ask you a question. Would you classify it like a baseball game that got rained out after the fifth inning?
See, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking about that because in baseball, if you get through 5, I think, then it can be considered a real game. You can call it. Now, technically, there was like 4.5 seconds left in the first half, but then they made the judgment decision when they went into the rain delay to just say that when we pick up, it'll be the start of the third quarter. Unfortunately, though, we didn't pick back up because the rain and the thunder and the lightning, it was just too much. So Cold Spring Harbor, your hosts of Games for Brains, only got to play a half, but in that half, they were leading 4-1 against Summit. And Ryan Reynolds, she had 3 goals in that game. Maya Soskin, she was big in the net as per usual. Zoe Soskin, really good on defense. Those were your 3 POGs in that game. And we did actually get to give them their t-shirts because we were back over there in 2 days, which we'll get into that in a second. But
Yeah, yeah, that worked out.
a rain shortened game for Cold Spring Harbor, but they do have another win in their tally. That was a 4-1 game.
Yeah, we gave him the W. Since it wasn't a league game, it really doesn't matter, right? I guess in the scope of things. And then Jill on Monday, before we get into our Monday game, which was a crosstown rival, our girl Jill covered a big game, right? Division went into the game undefeated, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Yes, Division was undefeated going into that game, and they were playing against Hicksville, and that was Hicksville coming away with the win. 13-7 was your final. So how about Hicksville taking down unbeaten Division in that matchup? Um, so in that game, actually, Brooke Sullivan Pagano, who's a future Mercy Mav, and again, we'll get into the Mavs a little bit later, but she had 7 goals in that game and 3 assists. So that's a 10-point day for Brooke. And then Catherine Perucci, she was 3-2. And also Gwen Cohart, she had 2 goals as well. But how about Hicksville taking down undefeated Division at the time?
That's a big W. Division was riding high, and Hicksville took it to him. Good job. Good job, Lady Comets. Taking down the Lady Dragons.
Yeah,
And
and then
then and then it was the town of Huntington against the town of Cold Spring Harbor, which a lot of the Colts, those of you that don't frequent the Huntington area, these kids grow up together. They literally everybody hangs out in the town of Huntington. It's a great little town, and we got to stream that game. Shout out to the Cold Spring Harbor parents, uh, especially one of the parents that took care of that. And that was started out right away. Huntington, you could tell Huntington wanted to show their true talent and level, right?
Yeah, they came out hot in that game. They quickly jumped out to a 3-0 lead in that game, and they ended up never trailing. Ended up winning that game 14-5. So the Blue Devils, they make it back-to-back years where they defeat their crosstown rival Cold Spring Harbor. And again, this one in convincing fashion. So the cup stays in Huntington. The Blue Devils, they do not relinquish the cup. But in that matchup, Tommy Klein, what a day. 4-2. Tommy Klein, the Loyola commit, he just had a huge day, and not just offensively, but really as a two-way player from the midfield, doing it both offensively and defensively. But he certainly ignited that Blue Devils offense at the face-off X, where Huntington also had a huge advantage. Luca Cuozo, but he showed that he's more than just a face-off specialist because he scored 4 goals in that game. The UMass commit in his senior year, Cuozo with a big day. Jack Kamenstein with a hat trick for Huntington. He had a hat trick and also 2 assists. Timmy McDonald with 2 goals. And then in the net, Will Fallon, he had 8 saves. And defensively, Parker Wands seemed
Ooh,
like he was on every ground ball for Huntington. Because there were a lot of 50-50 plays, I thought, especially in the first half. And pretty much all of those went Huntington's way. And Parker Wands, he was a huge reason why, coming up with those ground balls and also coming up with caused turnovers as well.
yeah, number four, man. That kid was all over the field. Every time you looked, that kid was on. He was part of the play. He made a
Yeah.
play defensively, offensively, clearing the ball, ground balls. He was special. Him and Klein, and I got to tell you, the attackman Kamenstein,
Yep.
very, very, very improved. I mean, one of the most improved attackmen I've seen in all of Long Island. That kid has really improved his game. He played awesome that game. So shout out to the Blue Devils. They definitely took it to the Seahawks. Um, they got to stay focused though, because they did notice. I mean, they played a good team in Connecticut, lost by a goal. But if they want to reach their goals, they need to stay focused. An old saying I've heard before: "Stay where your feet are." Basically, that means don't get ahead of yourself. Stay where your
Yeah.
feet are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Because,
But good win for them. And then obviously, Ellis, you went to a boys' game on Tuesday. Trying to remember where I was Tuesday. I had something going on.
yeah, where were you on Tuesday? Oh,
Oh, I went to the Nick
you had the
game.
nickname.
I took my daughter to the Nick game. My daughter's birthday, so I took her to the Nick game. The Knicks lost. They let us down, but we had a good time. My daughter was on a, talk radio show, which was pretty cool. We went to a bar and she got to talk on the talk radio show. I thought that was pretty cool. But you got to see the Islip Bayport boys. You want to talk about them?
I do want to talk about them, but I feel like that's a game where I'm going to need more than a minute and 5 seconds to go through. So why don't we take a break and we're going to come back with part number 2 of this edition of the Weekly Crossbar. And in part 2, we'll jump right into the Bayport Islip game.